Gabby, I want to start today's podcast with a quick little story about Colby Armstrong. So, when I was working with Colby once, we were having a conversation about trade deadline and what that morning is like for players, because players always hear the rumors leading into deadline, etc. And Colby said when he played in Toronto, what he would always do the morning skate on trade deadline is he would always find a reason to leave the ice, to get off the ice, because he knew that the minute he left the ice, everybody, all the media, assembled media in Toronto would go crazy. Everybody would start tweeting about how Colby Armstrong's left and where's Armstrong going, and they pulled him off the ice and there's a big deal happening. He would do it just to set the media on fire. So Colby could have a good time with it, right? Colby saw the humor in it and had fun with the Toronto media. But there are a lot of guys, and listen, right now in the NHL, plenty of rumors. We all know the obvious names. We're going to go over them a little bit later on. There are a lot of guys that don't do well with rumors, that don't do well when they see their name in the headlines each and every day. It's trying, it's distracting. I'm sure you've had this experience as a coach, talking to these players who can't get the rumors out of their heads. Do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, you know what? And it's in Canadian markets more than ever because the Canadian markets, quite frankly, are this is their whole life. Like, I mean, they can't wait. I mean, for the rumors to start, the trade deadline getting near. This is what they get up in the morning for. What can we make up today? Who can we say is going? Oh, I got to put it together. But I
Yeah.
tell you, when I was in Vancouver, it was it was nuts. And to the point. Like, I mean, we were doing really, really good. We're at that point. I think we had come back. We were within 2 points of a playoff spot, and the week of trade deadline, and it was in the paper every day. We're blowing up this, we're blowing up that, and we were playing at that point in time. That week, we played Detroit, Buffalo, and Ottawa, three non-playoff teams. We figured we win these games and we're in. We're going to make it in. And I had to more than once say, hey, nobody's getting traded. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's doing that. And to the point where I had to come in the one morning and I exactly what I said. I said, Connor Garland, you are not getting traded. JT Miller, you are not getting traded. The only guy that these guys upstairs, and I was just in the meeting yesterday, have talked about trading is Luke Shen. That's the only one. And I told him I didn't want him to trade. And so, but it had affected them so much. That week, we lost 1-0 to Detroit, 3-2 in overtime to Ottawa, and lost 2-1 to Buffalo. We had a streak going, and then we played those three lousy teams at the time, and it affected these guys so much, and that was the reason we didn't make the playoffs my first year. But sometimes you got to talk players off ledges, especially the ones that have families. I mean, like, I mean, that trade deadline, Luke Shen didn't get traded. The only guy that we got traded in Vancouver was Tyler Mott. And he was asking for too much, so they traded him, even though he was a really important player in our team. But it affected everybody. And that drove me nuts because the management never once came down and said, boys, we're going to really, you've been working your ass off, you're close, we're going to help you out. And it wasn't not one conversation about that. It was, who can we get rid of? I mean, and get an asset back, because they didn't care, quite frankly, that year about whether we made it or whether we didn't make it. And we ended up getting from in the trade deadline, we got Brad Richardson, who played really hard, but he was
Good player.
37 years old and he'd only played 7 games all year for Calgary. And they gave him us, and the guys would look around in the morning and going, that's what they think they're going to try and help us with. It was ridiculous, but these things happen at the trade deadline. I know when I was playing, I think one of the happiest times, just to change gears a little bit, when you were talking about Colby Armstrong, I was a member of the Leafs, and we'd have an afternoon practice and on trade deadline. And Mike Nicola came out, gathered everybody by the net. And because I was a guy that was always called up, he said, "This is the roster we put in. Nobody's getting traded. Everybody's here." And I was the happiest kid in Toronto that day because I knew they couldn't send me down. I mean, because this was the roster. So I had, been called up over the previous couple years about 15 times and sent down. And now I knew I was a Maple Leaf for till the end of the season, which, if other people are feeling the same thoughts, these young kids, then it's an amazing thought. And Washington's got them right now. They got young kids that they've brought up. I mean, and unless they've been told to get a place, you're on the verge. You're nuts. Like you're squeezing the sticks really tight. Especially if I look at the Caps now, they're losing a little bit. They're not in a playoff spot. These young guys are wondering every day, am I getting sent down? Am I getting traded? They're going to make a deal. It is, and if you've got a family, it's even worse because you're looking, do I have to move? Should I put my house up for sale? What's the story going? So it really, really affects an awful lot of people.
I want to get to the Washington Capitals and their situation coming up a little bit later on in the program. But Gabby, let me ask you this one to conclude the open of the podcast this week. If you played now in the NHL with, the major networks and trade deadline and 24/7 coverage, and this guy's getting moved and this issue with the no trade, and this guy's got a no move, and this guy's asked for a trade, would you be like Colby Armstrong and have fun with all of it, or would you be the nervous guy?
I would probably be the nervous guy because I didn't feel secure anytime I was in the NHL. Uh, it was the same thing, even coaching. And if we lost two in a row, no matter what my record was or what our team's record was, I was always worried. Uh-oh, what are they going to do? Are they going to start talking about a new coach? Are they going to send me down? It wasn't me that on my four shifts I didn't cause the loss, but they're still going to look for somebody to send down. So I was the nervous guy. I wish I had the confidence back then of Colby Armstrong. Now, if this was an American League trade deadline, I would feel pretty confident that they were not going to get rid of me. But the NHL thing, I would almost hide. Like, I mean, hey, do I have to go to work today? Like, I mean, can I hide at home and pretend I'm sick so they don't get rid of me? Like, I mean, I was always nervous.
Stay under the covers, Gabby. It's the safest place to be. Just stay under the covers. Welcome to the Hockey Lifers, brought to you by PenFed Credit Union. Great rates for everyone. Gabby, we're about to do the thing that you just said you didn't like. But pause on that for a second. Want to remind everybody today, coming up on the Hockey Lifers, John Buccigross from ESPN will stop by, sort of vibe check around the NHL with John, one of the best hockey observers in the game. Not just NHL, but college hockey as well. We'll see if we get to some college hockey talk as well with Bucci. In the meantime, Gabby, as it is that time of year, the calendar is already flipped. We're until late January now, heading into February. There's the Olympic break and the trade pause. And then when the Olympics are over, it's going to be full throttle to trade deadline. But all the rumors have started. And heck, the trades have already started. We saw Rasmus Anderson get traded to Vegas last week. We wonder if there'll be any more this week. Just thought it might be an interesting idea just to go over some of the teams and some of the names and get your thoughts on some of the personnel we may see change logos in the next little while. And we'll start with the New York Rangers, who have already sent out the letter, Chris Drury, saying this is going to be going out of his way not to say rebuild. That's the word that no manager wants to say these days. Retool, refurbish, renovate. I don't know, however you want to phrase what these things are. Just call them renos. Just call them renos. We'll all be fine. Artemi Panarin and Vincent Trocheck seem to be a couple of different targets here. Panarin seems to be the more immediate one. Elliott reporting on Hockey Night Saturday that, the return is something akin to what the Islanders got for Brock Nelson. That was essentially Cal Ritchie plus a first-round pick. There were other pieces, but those were the primaries. When you're looking at Artemi Panarin, I mean, LA jumps out at me as one possible destination. Dallas needs goal scoring. Washington Capitals, who we'll get to later, could use some goal scoring as well. Carolina, always in the mix for big players. But when you look at Artemi Panarin, what does Bruce Boudreau see?
Well, you see an awful talented player when he's motivated to play, and a difference maker for sure. He's still leading the New York Rangers in scoring. He's a guy that the every team plays their best line against, no matter who he's playing with. So, I mean, I think Artemi Panarin, if he was a guy that said, "Jesus, I would really like to go to X place," then
Yeah.
he would be a really motivated player because at 34 years old, I still think he wants at least 2 or 3 more years. Now he likes the bright lights of New York City. That's why he went there. But there's bright lights in a lot of towns these days. So I mean, I think if he went there, he'd be a difference maker for that team. And if you had to give up a Cal Ritchie and a first round pick, and you're a team that's going for it, usually those teams, the pick is in the 20s, which I mean, I would take Panarin over a 20th plus pick any day of the week. And you got to hit right on you've seen the prospects in your organization or the guys that are young, and you've got to hit and say, well, I don't think they're going to go any further, or I don't think they're going to be a superstar, so we can afford to get rid of them. And I think he's the number one guy to go, but he could be you could put him on a team that's not a bubble team, but a team that's a bubble team like Dallas, for instance, okay, and that could possibly win the cup. And
Yep.
he would make the difference in that team. The Dallas power play is horrible. I think Panarin would help that team an awful lot right now.
Vincent Trocheck, one of the other curious candidates here for a trade. I've wondered about the Detroit Red Wings with a player like Vincent Trocheck. Wrongly, I thought he was going to be the next captain of the New York Rangers. I know that's how much he means to that Rangers dressing room. Of course, it turned out to be JT Miller, Chris Drury's choice here. What about Vincent Trocheck?
I think Detroit's a great spot for him. I think I've watched Detroit twice this week, and you know what? They look real. They look like they're not a team that's going to fold down the stretch. If you remember a couple years ago, they won 6 in a row, and everybody says the Wings are going to be in, and then they went out and lost 6 in a row right after that. That's not happening to Detroit. I know Todd McClellan. I know Trent Yanni very well, and they won't let that happen to them. And so, I mean, if I'm Detroit, you know what? They've got a chance at first place in the East or the Atlantic. I would go out, and as if it didn't screw up the chemistry, and I don't think the coaching in that organization would let it happen. I would go and get a Trocheck, and that would put Comfort down to third line center. And I think that's what they need, that depth that have Larkin, Trocheck, and Comper. And I think that would really strengthen their forward unit. So, I mean, I think it would be a great fit there. I mean, there's not a team in the league that couldn't use a great center that like him. I mean, Trocheck is like a young Nazem Kadri when he went to Colorado. He could play that bumper spot in the power play if that's what Colorado ever needed, but they could also use that next center. Like, I mean, could you imagine McKinnon, Brock Nelson, and Trocheck as your three centermen? I mean, that would pretty well secure it for me, and or even Edmonton, and then you put Draisaitl back up with McDavid full time, and I think that would be work too. So I mean, I think there's going to be a big market for him coming
I
down in
agree.
the next few weeks, and centermen are so good. Centermen are so hard to find, and if you can trade for one and then give him the number, you can sign him for what you want or for what he wants, and have another great centerman for a few more years.
All of that is true. And the thing about the Detroit Red Wings, too, going back to Steve Yzerman's squad, sounds very much like they're looking for one top six forward, one defenseman as well. They were in the Quinn Hughes conversation. They weren't prepared to meet or match what the Minnesota Wild were offering, but I don't think their desire to find another D and look for a forward have gone anywhere. You mentioned Nazem Kadri. That's a name that I think a lot of people have wondered about with the Calgary Flames. Equally, I think people have wondered about Blake Coleman. I could see Destination Dallas for either of these two players specifically. There has been noise made about, does Kadri reunite with the Colorado Avalanche and, harken back to the days of winning a Stanley Cup. Nazem Kadri and Blake Coleman for you, Bruce Boudreau.
Okay, this is just my opinion here, and I think this year when I watch Calgary, Nazem looks old. He's 35 right now, and he's done great things, but I think he's got less than 10 goals for a guy that plays in the first or second line and on the power play for Calgary. I wouldn't go for him. I just think that sometimes everybody looks a little older. If you wanted to have him down and play 12 minutes a night, yeah, he'd be effective as a penalty killer and everything else for you. But I don't think if you want to jumpstart your team and get into that number two hole as a centerman, I don't think he's the right guy. I thought at the beginning of the year he'd be a perfect fit in Montreal, but I'm just watching Calgary the last couple games, and he's just to me not that effective. So I would sort of, I would pump the brakes a little bit on Nazem Kadri right now. But
How much of that, just quickly, how much of that do you think is environment, though? Listen, this hasn't been the best possible, situation for the Calgary Flames. Like they took the good sort of college try at it last year, came up short. We all know what the program and the plan is for Calgary. Do you think this could be a change of scenery does good for Kadri?
yeah, it could, I guess, but I think Calgary waited too late to me. I think they were on the verge of, hey, should we trade him? We got a chance at the playoffs again, and
True.
then they're sitting there. But I think they've waited a little too late for me in my estimation. Whereas Blake Coleman is the kind of guy that most teams will want because he's a third line physical left winger, which is what you need in the playoffs. And I mean, he's not going to cost you the moon and he's not going to disrupt the whole thing. But I mean, he's a wanted guy. There's an awful lot of teams that would want a Blake Coleman on their team.
Okay, we'll switch venues here, but stay in Canada. The Vancouver Canucks have a few. Elias Pettersson. I think we wonder about Connor Garland. His trade protection doesn't kick in until July 1st. And Tyler Myers has recently indicated to Ben Kuzma in Vancouver that he could be amenable to waiving his no trade here. Let's start with Elias Pettersson. To me, that's a tricky trade just because of the dollars involved in this one. Like this one, if they're going to move Elias Pettersson, it feels like a draft day or summer trade when you really can open up the field. But look, it was only a couple of years ago that, they were talking with the Carolina Hurricanes about Elias Pettersson. What do you see happening here?
Man, it's interesting to me because 3 years ago, I think the Vancouver Canucks had the best 1, 2, 3, even
Boy.
four punch at center in
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire league. Now, think about it. They had JT Miller, they had Bo Horvat, they had Elias Pettersson and Jason Dickinson, who's now a 20 goal scorer in Chicago. Those are your four centermen. They have none of them now. Now, with Elias Pettersson, let's look at it again. I mean, next year, they want to have Cheadle as one or two. Marco Rossi they just signed, and gave up Quinn Hughes for basically Marco Rossi and BM. So I mean, they're going to have him as the number two for sure. And now where's Elias Pettersson? So he's going to be back playing with the slugs in Vancouver and saying, oh, and them saying, hey, you make us better. You make him better. And I think I don't see why he'd want to be there. I gotta believe that they would want to trade him and hopefully I think that a change of scenery for him would be incredibly good because I still think he's a superstar. I mean, I'm only going by what I had him for 2 years. He was fabulous in every situation except winning faceoffs. So I think they should try to move him. They'd probably have to eat some money because his last 2 years have not been very productive. But if I was a team that needed a number one center that was still in his mid-20s, he would be the kind of guy that I would go after.
Connor Garland.
He's struggled lately, but he he's a funny guy in that he competes as hard as anybody, as hard as anybody, and he's a good player. And his size has sometimes been a deterrent, but nobody tries as hard as Connor Garland. And I mean, and boy, I challenged him to a few times and he'd come right back at me. One time it was in Toronto. I called him a third line winger and he at that morning skate, he came right up to me and he said, "Are you friggin' kidding me? I'm not a third line. I'm a top six forward." And I went, whoa, whoa. It was taken out of context. I don't know, I was backtracking like crazy there. But I mean, the fire in his belly is there. Like, I mean, I think if you put him on a good team and you give him a viable spot because he wants to feel really important on the team, then he would be good. But I mean, I think what's he got? 5 year? He signed a 5 year deal in Van or something, and I
Kicks in at
thought,
five. Yeah, he hasn't
and
even started the new deal.
yeah, and it kicks in next year. So I mean, boy, it would be a if I'm Connor, I'm going, please somebody trade for me because this does not look good for the next few years, no matter who Vancouver gets in the draft. Like I mean, it just looks like they're totally rebuilding. They got right now they don't have an awful lot in the minors because all those guys that were in the minors in Vancouver are playing in the NHL right now. So I don't know what they're going to do. But if I'm Connor Garland and if I'm Tyler Myers, who's been a great soldier there, I
Yeah.
mean, and what team doesn't want like a 6'8" defensive defenseman that you put him in the right spots is going to really do good. And I don't think it would cost you an awful lot to get Tyler Myers, but those two guys, if they're on the trade table, people are looking for them.
Vancouver is very much open for business. We also suspect the St. Louis Blues are open for business as well. Jordan Kyrou's name has been out there for a while, attached to various teams. If there's a team out there that's looking for an injection of speed, perhaps Washington could come to mind there. Jordan Kyrou could be your guy. Robert Thomas. Which I mean, that would be a massive, massive price a team would have to pay to get Doug Armstrong to pick up the phone on Robert Thomas. But nonetheless, his name is out there, and I think a lot of people wonder about Justin Falk, the defenseman, as well. You have a thought on Doug Armstrong's squad here?
Well, first of all, I respect Doug Armstrong so much that I think that whatever he's going to do, it's going to be a good deal for St. Louis. Um, so, I mean, uh, he's if he's talking, and I have no idea if he is about those players that you mentioned. I mean, they're going to get good hauls. Jordan Kyrou, great speed. When he wants to play, he's really good. But the problem is sometimes he doesn't want to play, and that's the inconsistencies in him. Robert Thomas is just a really good number one center. It would be like when St. Louis traded Ryan O'Reilly. I think that kind of thing. He's not old. He's young. He's a really good player. I don't know if you could get a good enough return where Robert Thomas is in his still in his 20s, where you could get a good enough return to make that trade. I don't think he's going to be traded. Even they can talk about it till they're blue in the face. So, but Justin Falk is a guy that for sure would. He would be like the acquisition to a team like Cam Fowler was to St. Louis last year. I think an offensive mind. He's having a pretty good year, but St. Louis isn't having a good year. So and I don't know how many years he's got left on his deal. I got to believe it's coming up pretty soon. But he would be a good right-handed defenseman that could play the power play. Duh, maybe the Leafs are looking for something of that nature, depending on Tanev's, whether he's even going to be coming back again this year.
I'm not, just as an aside, I'm not sure that the Maple Leafs should be in addition mode at
No.
this point, as we're down to 30 games left in the season, 5 points out, wild card, Boston is streaking, etc. This past weekend kind of felt like this was the moment where the Maple Leafs said, "This is who we are, and this is our season." Dropped a tough one to the Vegas Golden Knights and Mitch Marner, and then just got, and I think the score was kind. I think the score was very flattering. Didn't seem like a 4-1 game. Colorado Avalanche do this to a lot of teams, but that score could have been a lot higher based
I,
based on the play. It seemed like this was the weekend where Toronto said, "We can't hang with the big dogs."
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I was talking to one of the analysts, an analyst yesterday, and I said it looked like Colorado. They got the two goals early and said, "Okay, we're just gonna just play with them for a little while," and Toronto didn't put a big enough push in that could handle where Colorado would say, "Oh, they're coming. They're coming after us." I mean, they didn't look worried at all. So I mean, and I think again they play Buffalo, which is Toronto does on Monday or Tuesday, and I think that's going to be a telling game. And there's just too many teams to climb in the East, and I just
Yes.
think that this is um, Toronto's made the playoffs consecutively more than any team in the NHL right now. But I think it's this year's turn for them to take a backseat to other teams. And as much as I'm a Toronto fan, I don't think it's going to work for them.
Yeah, and that sort of begs the question. If you're Brad Treliving here, we'll finish up the sort of vibe check on trades here with the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you're Brad Treliving right now, like certainly there will be the corporate pressure from above to make the playoffs and the return on investment and get the Maple Leafs in the postseason for television, for sponsors, for fans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a tricky needle here for Brad Treliving to thread if you don't think that you have the horses to make it this season. As far as the Maple Leafs go, too, technically they do have a first round pick as long as it is in the top five. Otherwise, that gets surrendered to the Boston Bruins. So if you're Brad Treliving, what do you do here? Do you even worry about that first round pick? And do you just say, we have to go for it? And even if we come short, it's worth it? Or do you say, for the future of this organization, it's best that we do the bunny hop backwards right now, get that top five pick, reload, spell off whatever you can at trade deadline for whoever is not nailed down, and come back at it next season? It's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one because if you get a top five pick, it's different people going to be making the pick for. It's not going to be Brad Treliving. That's the problem, right? And if you know as well as anybody, Toronto is a difficult city. They don't like, even though they're used to it in hockey, they don't like losing. And so, I mean, I don't think they would stand for non-change if it went to that. I think where the Leafs are playing okay right now, but the problem is the Leafs were horrible for the first 20 games of the season. In October and the middle of November, that's where they lost their opportunity. They played all these home games, all these games against non-playoff teams, and they lost them. So now it's too difficult when you have to play those good teams and to catch up to play them. I think they're going to not make the playoffs. I think I would trade a couple players, but I think I would still want to give the fans hope that they're going to try to make the playoffs.
This team bluntly looks old and looks slow. You saw it on game one. You talk about the first 20 games. Game one of the NHL season this year, the Maple Leafs beat the Montreal Canadiens. Anybody that watched that game will tell you Montreal was a better team. Montreal was a faster team. Toronto has looked old and has looked slow all season long, Gabby.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, it is what it is. Like I mean, their back end is really slow, and and they don't move the puck quick, and their goaltending has been in and out, and and Austin Matthews for the last 3 weeks has been really good, but that's been when he's been really good. So I think Toronto, it's we're not supposed to be talking about Toronto all night long, but I mean, I just think they're in trouble this year, and
Yep.
that's the best I can say.
Okay, we'll transition to our guest here. You know him from ESPN, certainly, whether it is covering the NHL or whether it is covering college hockey. He really is kind of someone in hockey media that doesn't need an introduction. Please enjoy our conversation with John Buccigross of ESPN. Well, John, this is a real delight. Love the Michigan jersey. I was in Ann Arbor a few weeks ago, and I
I know
finally.
that's why I wore it.
Well, I was going to say I finally had one of the great thrills of my life. I got to bore Red Berenson for an entire intermission with my goofy stories and questions. The Yost Arena is an experience I think everybody should have. It's an absolute gem, and I want to get to college hockey, but I want to ask you initially here a sort of vibe check on the season. Everything seems so intense. And normally it seems intense when the calendar flips. But the way that hockey's going right now, it's like there's an intensity to the season that starts on game one. And I've sort of framed it this way. I'm curious where you're at it on this issue. It doesn't seem as if there's an 82 game season anymore. It's 82 one game seasons. Everything is an audit on everything else. Does it feel that way to you, Bucci?
I think there is. There is a desperation. We hear about the early season math that started happening,
Yes.
about 5, 7 years ago, right? The Thanksgiving standings. So that give the first third of the season a little bit of urgency. And then that kind of goes away because well, historically, the Blues won a cup when they were last on this particular date. So we still have that to lean on. And so I think that kind of goes in thirds, but there is a slow build. I think teams now, there's another level of urgency as you get 5 to 7 points behind. And I thought January tends to be the month of separation. And of course, now it happens quicker because of the compressed schedule. So I do believe that January, late January into February, the Aquarius, which I'm an Aquarius. So, we tend to overthink. We tend to be pretty intense. So it's a season of Aquarius. And that's when things really buckle up. I think we see Ottawa realizing it's now or never. Columbus, it's now or never. We have to have our 9 game win streak, our 8 game win streak. Everyone needs one if you're behind. Buffalo did it, and they kept it going, and now they're in pretty good shape.
January is fast. I'm going to turn this over to Bruce in a second. One quick follow-up. I am curious about when we know who teams are. And this has been a streaky season. Listen, Anaheim went up, Anaheim went down, Anaheim's on another run right now. I always look at sort of pendulums that overcorrect until they find their balance point, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How many teams, Bucci, do you look at and can you say, I know this team? I think we're saying about Colorado. I think we're knowing it about Tampa. But how many teams do you look at and say, I, John Buccigross, know this team?
You're right. Tampa, I'd put Detroit in that mix. We'll see because they've had a consistent roster and they're slowly getting a little bit better. And now Stevie Y could absolutely swing for the fences with all the cap room, and he could really make a gigantic move. In the West, I think we kind of know who Minnesota is now because of Hughes, although it sounds like that Billy Guerin might be dangling Volstead, which could be an absolute bomb of a trade.
Yeah.
And so I think in Carolina, right? Carolina is Rod Brindamore. Rod Brindamore is that guy, that neighbor, that parent who never changes. He is who he is, and that ain't changing. So yeah, you're right. And so I think those constants, we know who they are. And like you said, that's Colorado. They might add one defenseman. They might add a pretty good bottom six guy. Who knows? It might be Charlie Coyle again. You never know. So yeah, something like that. But it is, and I think because the league is so young, that's why we're seeing the swings. And also teams can get better. Anaheim can it reminds me of college. The team in October is not the team in February because you can get better when you're young. Us old goats, we kind of are who we are. We can get a little bit better at things. We can tweak, but young teams can make a leap over 5-6 months. It's half a year. When the younger you are, that's a bigger percentage of your life.
Well, you know what? And here's my thing. It's gonna lead into another question, but I've heard so many great things about your prognostications in the past. How's that for a word? Okay. What do you think is going to happen when it all ends up this year? Like, who are the teams that are going to come together and there's a reason I'm asking this. Who are the teams that are going to come together when it comes Stanley Cup final? I know anything can happen, but do you see a team from the East and a team from the West that sticks out more than any other team that's going to be there?
I think only 3 teams can win the cup in the East: Tampa, Carolina, Florida. In the West, I see maybe 5 or 6. Colorado, Minnesota, Dallas, doesn't look good now. Edmonton, Vegas. That's 5. Yeah, so I see 5 in the West, 3 in the East. Well, one of those 8 teams in my mind are the only teams that can really win multiple best of 7 game series. Can you beat this team 4 out of 5, 4 out of 6, 4 out of 7 times? That's how I look at it. Like, I love Detroit. I love the story. I want them to make the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's good for business. It's good for our business. They rate. So I root for ratings. That's how I want to get my next contract, like a coach does, like a GM does, like a player does. Let's face it, we're trying to pay our mortgages. But right now I see but can you see Detroit beating, and I should, they're probably close enough, but can they beat Tampa 4 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 4 out of 5 times? Now, injuries happen. We know that. Hot goalies happen. But right now, I would say those 8.
Okay, well, I'm going to Vegas today, so that's one of the reasons that I asked you that question. The other reason, back, in the day, I don't know what year it was it 2010 that you wrote that Alex Ovechkin could possibly catch Wayne Gretzky in goal scoring, and then you had a theory on it, and it came out to absolutely the exact same, the right number. Like, I mean, do people? Why don't you tell the story about what you did? Much better than me telling it. But I mean, it's amazing to the people out there that how accurate you were so far, so long ago.
Yeah, it was 2009. When you write a weekly column like I did back then on ESPN.com for 15 years, you're looking for something every week. But, I'd met the guy. He did a This Is Sports Center commercial, a great one where he's a Russian spy and he falls from the ceiling and he's there in the copy machine. And it's just a great This Is Sports Center, underrated This Is Sports Center piece. And he was there. So I got a couple minutes with him. I observed him. I watched him. I realized, well, this guy's got good parents. He was raised well. And he's built this base, this statistical base now in his early 20s, because that's how you break records. You build it in your 20s because it's hard to chase later. He wasn't getting injured, and I just felt like there was something there with him, the way the league was going. It seemed like scoring was in the future. It wasn't really for most of his prime. He did not play in prime goal scoring number era, when he was in his prime there, 20s and early 30s, which makes the feat even more remarkable. But there's just something about him. And I love historical comparisons. I'm a lot like Jeff that way. I love the history of the game. And I realized, well, geez, Brendan Shanahan scored this many goals at 37. Phil Esposito popped in this many at 38. Like, he'll have this kind of career. Well, he'll slow down. He'll get closer to the net. Slap shots don't age. Right? Slap shots don't age. You can still bring a slap shot. Your skating slows down. But, my dad played slow pitch softball till he was 53. He still had his power at 53. Like, you don't lose your power, your old man strength power till a little bit after that. So I just thought there was enough there that, I think this is the one guy, like LeBron James, doesn't get hurt. And so he can pile up big numbers.
And that's the reason why, Bucci, I don't think this one is going to get touched. This is like, last week after we saw the goalie fight, I sort of went back and tried to figure out like which goaltenders had the most career fights, and it's Billy Smith with 21.
Wow.
Now, Billy fought players. Wow. Billy
Yes.
just didn't fight goaltenders. Like, I'm very confident, much like Glenn Hall records, I'm very confident saying Billy Smith's 21 fights as a goalie will never be broken. And I got that, I'll tell you, and it's because he never got hurt really significantly. I get that soap and warm water feeling for Ovechkin's goal scoring record as well. I know we all said it about Gretzky once upon a time, but as you point out, the freak in the record is sure the shot, absolutely, but health. Like, as the common denominator, I don't know anyone's going to stay as healthy and productive at the same time as Ovechkin did.
Right. And like Bruce said, I was listening to Bruce once, either NHL Network or a podcast, and he said he knows where his shot is going. Like, that was, when he said that, I got goosebumps. It's like, wow. Because for obviously Bruce played in the league. He can see it at practice. Like, oh my God, he aimed for that. His batting average is like 60% to put that one-timer short side high. And Cole Caulfield has that skill, right? Like, oh my goodness, he can put that thing short side and he's almost like Leon. He's the right-handed shot. Leon Draisaitl is what Cole Caulfield's becoming. But yeah, when Bruce said that, I was like, wow, I didn't realize that when I wrote that article, but had I known that, I would have been more confident. But yeah, I kind of based my whole career on that, Bruce. So I'm glad it happened. That was a big one for me. Like, I got nothing else.
Well, you got the number. No, you have so much more, but you got the number right on that you said he'd have 897 goals by the age of 40, and that's exactly what he got. Like you can't guess that. That's over
Well,
the top.
he even beat me by a little bit. I thought it would take till 40. He actually got me by about 6 months to 8 months. So, because yeah, I did not see the 35 to 39 production coming. I thought it would be a little more like upper 30s, upper 20s, low 30s. I thought he'd be there, but man, then what he did last year, actually from the All-Star break in the year before till last year when he broke it, I didn't see that coming. That camel ride was something else.
Hmm. I agree.
I want to ask you about someone who's near and dear to your heart, who's near and dear to our hearts, someone that Bruce knows very well on multiple levels, and that's Barry Melrose.
Mm.
Barry Melrose, I've always made this point, and you're part of this too. Hockey kind of went away for a while, stateside, and there's one giant figure, and you're included in this one too, Bucci, who really helped keep hockey alive and went out of his way to keep hockey right next to the quote unquote other big sports. And that's Barry Melrose. He always found a way to make it interesting. He always found a way to make it colorful. And he always gave you a reason to not give up on hockey. Do you have a thought on Barry Melrose and the Foster Hewitt? Like I know I've worked studio my whole life, and so I have a burr in my saddle about studio people, the Dave Hodges of the world, and Barry Melrose of the world, and Ron McLean, etc., not being recognized for this award. Do you have a thought on Barry and that award specifically?
Yeah, well, that was beautifully put, Jeff. Especially the 17 years we didn't have hockey from 2004 to 2021. I don't know if Barry was offered other gigs. Never had that intimate conversation, but he stayed at ESPN for those 17 years. And you're right, he carried the torch on SportsCenter, which had very important meaning, and still does a little bit, but it kind of slowly lost it as people could watch the highlights on the phone. And you didn't have to watch SportsCenter, probably starting 2016, 7. So that's still a 13-year run where people were watching SportsCenter for highlights, and they see Barry Melrose afternoon and night, every night in the playoffs. He would drive to Bristol, stay in the hotel across the street, the Clarion, because he still lived in Glens Falls, New York, and he would be there every day during the playoffs, every day, every SportsCenter, afternoon and night. And I'm not a big awards Hall of Fame guy. My Twitter bio is 0-time Emmy award winner, but it's just like for someone like him, it would be just an amazing night. It's one little line in the definition, and people talk about they got to get these groups together and vote on it. It's like, no, this is not what this should be about. It's an easy fix. We can fix it in 20 minutes. And like you said, the studio guys, it's late nights. It's not the easiest existence. We're in the Toy Story business. I get that. We're in the toy store business, but still, it's just like you said, what he did. He never left. He was loyal to eat, and just to see him operate, always be early, always have a suit, and then doing college games with them. I love how he called them franchises and organizations. He never got that out of his head. But I did 12 Frozen Fours with him. I started doing the NCAA tournament in 2006. Nobody called more championship games than Barry. The boys, when he would walk in the room and we get to talk to him, their eyes would light up. And when you go out to dinner with him, it's like being with Elvis. He walked across the room at the steakhouse and everybody looked, even if they didn't know who he was. They're like, that's somebody. That guy, that quiet Johnny Cash farm boy vibe that he had, except with the mullet and the hair. It's like just a pleasure how he treated people. Every autograph, every picture. I could go on, but yeah, it's an easy fix. We can fix this in 20 minutes. We don't need quorums and votes and all this kind of stuff. But some people take that kind of stuff seriously.
Hey, how funny was he when you turned the cameras off? Like, I mean, I lived with him. Like
I can
he
imagine.
had me in stitches. Like, I mean, like he towered over me. You ever see that commercial or that cartoon where you have, he's my buddy, he's my friend. He would be patting me on top of the head, going, "Come on, Gabby, go do this, go do that." Like he was the boss of everything.
The explosive laugh, just that
Yeah.
explosive laugh would echo throughout the room, and that was his release. because he really was kind of an introvert, quiet kind of guy on the deep inside, right? A farm boy who grew up in Saskatchewan with no indoor plumbing until he was 13. That was his life. He saw things as a kid on the farm, geez, slaughtering pigs and stuff. That I can't imagine I would have seen when I was 10. My goodness, it was everyday stuff for him. It kind of made him who he was. He fought since he was 15, and who knows, maybe that's why he's dealing with the things he's dealing with now with Parkinson's and what's going on in his brain, which is just tragic for a guy of that quick a wit and his unbelievable quick wit. For him to get that is an awful irony. It's a tragic irony, and I hate it. So now we just hope he's in Ohio with his wife Cindy, where he met her. She was a cheerleader for the Cincinnati Stingers. He was playing there, and now they're back in Oxford, Ohio, where it all began. So I just hope he has a peaceful, beautiful life, a long one to go, and he can still interact with his grandkids, who he just treasures.
Yeah, you know what? I could talk for hours about him. But I mean, I'll wait for a different day because I got so many stories of Barry Melrose. I mean, he's still one of my all-time favorite friends. So I'm glad you brought him up, Jeff. It's always good to talk about Barry.
Good man. Melrose is a good man. Someone that one of those people where you enjoy every single conversation. Like every moment, every interaction, all of it. Warren Zevon, famously said on the Letterman show, "Enjoy every sandwich." Barry Melrose allowed you to enjoy every sandwich because you enjoyed every conversation that you had with Barry Melrose. Let me finish on this one. Reference to Michigan, sweater, jersey, depending on whether you're Canadian or American. College hockey in general. Like I live in Canada, and this is the first season of the new reality where CHL players can go and play Division I hockey, and we've seen a lot. Like in Michigan, Malcolm Spence goes, and Jack Ivankovic goes, and Henry Muse goes. We don't really know where all of this is heading. It's going to settle into the relationship that it's going to be. But I'll ask you to put your 2009 prognosticators hat on again and not ask you about Alex Ovechkin, but ask you about the future of college hockey. Where is it all going, John?
Yeah, funny when people would ask me that at this time last year, Jeff, I'm like, whatever you think it's going to happen, it probably won't. Like, we have to go through the process. You can try to say what it's going to do to the Western League and what it's going to do to this, and you just don't know, because eventually Cavan McKenna and other young players are going to go through this and either enjoy it and spread the word or give some warnings. Like, these guys are 22, 23, they're older, it's tough. You might want to wait a year. Or maybe the challenges are exactly what McKenna needed. Imagine a young person facing some adversity. Wow, what a concept. Actually, it might be good for him. Like what Connor Bedard went through, I think is awesome. He went through that 2 years in Chicago. Now he's on the other side. He is grateful. He's lit up. He smiles. He has fun. He's got a sweat. I love the adversity. So if they look at it like that, hey, this is almost like Paris Island. You're going to go there and really struggle those first 3, 4, 5, 6 months. These are men, and you're going to have to buck up and do I want to stay and fight, or do I want to go back and make it where it's easier? So, he has so much skill, Cavan McKenna, and there's no one really his peer on his team, which is a problem for him. But going on, it's made the sport. It's given the sport a jolt this year. Will it sustain itself? We'll find out. But the more skill, the better. And I think some Canadian kids are realizing the allure of college campuses and to be have an alma mater and things like that. I know Ray Ferraro, deep down, I think, kind of wishes he went and played college hockey for a year or two. He was recruited to Northern Michigan, and he could have gone there. But and I know his boys, like, geez, maybe they'll go and I can go visit them on a college campus, and we can go to a football game, and and then we go see him play hockey. That's why it's so popular. It's why the second most popular sport in America is college football. And it's because of the nostalgia and the reminiscing of when we were young and we hung around friends and we had friends, hundreds of friends in 3 blocks. And as we get older, we have fewer and fewer friends over 3 blocks. And that's the beauty of college.
It's Ray just decided to stay and smash a bunch of records with the Brandon.
127 goals or whatever.
Junior players the country has ever seen. Bucci, this has been great. Thanks so much for stopping by the podcast today. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your time and continued success. And please pass along our best to Barry the next time you have a conversation.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Bruce. Love you both.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks, John. We thank John Buccigross of ESPN for his time. A couple of interesting points there about college hockey as well, like this being the first year of the The new reality, Gabby. We don't know where this is all going to settle in. What are your questions about it? What are your concerns, issues, any of that?
Well, I guess the big thing is Gavin McKenna. I mean, this time last year, everybody was calling him all world, you know, one of those players that are going to
Yep.
change the way everything looks on your team. And so depending on how like he goes there and he's doing okay, he's doing good, he's Penn State's best player, but if he all of a sudden fell to fourth or fifth in the draft, there'd be an awful lot of good young players in Canada going, whoa, 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 I don't want to expose myself that. I want them to keep thinking that I'm better than I really am, and stay in
Well,
junior. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
It's a fascinating topic, and I think that's a really interesting perspective too. I mean, Keaton Verhoff at North Dakota, who left the Victoria Royals of the Western League, is also in that boat too. The way that I look at it is, it would have been easy for Gavin McKenna to stay in Medicine Hat, play for the Tigers, smash some Western Hockey League records, and really cement himself as the first overall pick without any question. He goes to Penn State, finds himself playing down the lineup, playing against bigger, older, stronger competition. All of a sudden, Ivar Stenberg of Sweden has entered the conversation potentially for being the first overall pick. And I'm of a couple of minds here, Gabby. One, and Bucci mentioned this, sort of hinted at this in one of his answers. He said, on the one hand, he's made this decision to go play against tougher competition where he is going to struggle, as opposed to staying in the Western Hockey League where he would have dominated. The thing that I wonder about here is, we can of course see players leaving the CHL to go play college hockey. I just wonder about the guys that go in their draft year. To your point, it is such an important year, not just for right now, but for your entire career. I just wonder if this acts as some type of cautionary tale, to your point, for players that say, maybe I should do it, but my draft year is so important. I'm going to stay where I'm comfortable. So, on the one hand, I applaud Gavin McKenna for putting himself in an uncomfortable conversation, an uncomfortable position. But at the same time, he could have just dominated in the Western League and left no doubt who should be first overall. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Like, I mean, get it done and then improve yourself. If you're not ready for the NHL at that moment, then improve yourself a little bit like Ryan Leonard, go to
Yeah.
college, and play your 1 or 2 years against men, uh, uh, hone your game a lot better, get stronger, get bigger, and then do it. I mean, I think Niagara has a player, Ryan Ruprecht, who was is going to be a first round pick. I hope. I really liked him last year when I saw him in Niagara. But at 6'3", like, do it in junior. Then next year, go to college to get bigger, stronger, and play against better men before you're
Exactly.
ready for the NHL. That kind of thing.
That's what Malcolm Spence did. Left the Erie Otters and went to play for Michigan and Brandon Naurato. Thanks to John Buccigross again for stopping by from ESPN. John's one of the best, and you just saw why right there. Washington Capitals kind of going through a speed wobble right now. Interesting weekend for them. I look at the Saturday game, which is probably, out of all the games that I saw last week in the NHL, that game was the most exciting. Overtime win for the Edmonton Oilers, tied it up late, and the McDavid turns into Connor McDavid in overtime, and the Oilers win. Evan Bouchard with 6 points, 3 goals, and 3 assists, joins a very elite club there. I just watching the game, like, to me, that is a game that Washington deserved more than just the 1 point that they got out of it. But at this point of the season, moral victories don't really amount to a hill of beans. What do you see Washington's issues right now? And what do you think last week's guest on the podcast, Chris Patrick, does about it?
Well, I mean, I was thinking about this earlier, and I think Chris has got to do something. Um, I think that they've won one, lost one almost consistently since early December now. So uh, they're not the same team as they were last year, or they're not having the same luck. I mean, I think there's got a lot of the same players, but let's face it, last year, a lot of players had career years. They went 60 straight games with the same defense with no injuries. Logan Thompson was out of his mind. And I mean, Charlie Lindgren's been, and Logan Thompson both been superior last year. Now they're sort of more really good, but not as good as they were last year. I think what the Caps need, and I'm nowhere an expert or anything, but they need something and we talked about it earlier, a trade, just a boost, something to, and it might not mean take much. I mean, let's face it, the Buffalo Sabres changed their GM and then they went on fire. I mean, just a change or an addition from somebody to get them, because they're going to have to go on a 7-0-3 run if they want to not only do something but make the playoffs. I mean, there's so many teams in the Metro and the Atlantic that are just so bottled up together. You got to find some way to, to get apart from these guys. And I don't know what they're going to do, but I hope it happens soon.
It's an interesting point about not needing anything massive, but just needing something for a jolt. The one trade, I remember asking Scott Niedermayer about this when the Anaheim Ducks won the Stanley Cup in 2007. The one trade that they all look at and say, that was the trade that put us over the top, that was the trade that did it for us, was at the time a pretty small one. It was Brad May. It wasn't a massive name, but it was Brad May, and that was the shot in the arm that all those guys needed. Next thing you know, Scott Niedermayer, Chris Pronger, Sammy Paulson's line, etc., are lifting the Stanley Cup. Did you see the Connor McDavid donkey kick on Tom Wilson, by the way?
I didn't. I did the game before, and I got home at so late, like I just didn't get a chance to stay up and watch that. That would have been fun to see.
It was an interesting one, considering they're going to be teammates here in short order for Team Canada at the Olympics. Let me close the Capitals conversation with this one. 90 games. It's not the monkey off the back, it's the gorilla off the back for Hendrix Lapierre. Finally, against the Calgary Flames last week, finds the back of the net. I can only imagine how good that felt for Hendrix Lapierre.
Because I can imagine when you go long times without scoring. But the thing that keeps me going about the Caps is when Hendrix scored that goal, how the other players felt. That's why there's still that same close-knit group of guys that wants to win, that believes in themselves. And that's the part that gives me hope. The way John Carlson at 37 years old or whatever he is jumped into his arms, the way the guys on the bench looked as if they'd scored an overtime goal in the playoffs. These kind of things are the ones that give me hope that this is a complete together team. And those are the things in hockey that you love watching. I was doing that game, and I was so pumped up to be able to be part of that.
Okay, Gabby, as we wrap up the podcast once again, a couple of things. One, starting with, Hey Gabby. For you to ask Gabby a question, please use the hashtag on social media, Hey Gabby. This comes to us from AWVA. Who was the scariest, most intimidating player, Gabby, you ever played against? And did you ever get in a physical confrontation where you bit off more than you could chew?
No, because I turtled. But there was been some scary individuals that you can play against, and their reputation far precedes them when you're playing the game. Now, me, in my position, I didn't really have to deal with the scariest guys. But I'll tell you, when I played for the St. Catharines Saints in 82, 83, the one guy I feared more than anybody was a guy on my own team. And his name was Lee Verstraete. Because he would stick you in the face and not think twice. He was a tough guy, but he was scary tough because you didn't know what he was going to do. He would flip out. I'll tell you a quick, not a Lee Verstraete story, but that's a guy I was scared of on my own team. But I'll tell you a funny story.
Sure.
When I coached in the American League in Manchester, and then in the playoffs, I was called up to L.A. to skate the non-playing players, right? So, which often happens. The American League team coach
Yeah.
comes up, and so I'm coaching. Stu Grimson is on the team at the time, and he's not playing. And so every day, the Andy Murray wanted me to bag skate them, and so the one day I don't want to bag skate them, and I'm or I'm no, I'm bag skating them, but I tell Stu he doesn't have to do it. And Stu comes up to me. Now I played against Stu when he was in Salt Lake, and everybody knows Stu Grimson's one of the toughest guys that's ever played the
Oh, yeah.
game.
Oh, yeah.
So Stu comes up to me and he says, "Hey, coach, don't worry about me skating. You can skate me." He says, because like I haven't beat up a coach in almost about 2 years now. So, don't be afraid to give me a little crap here. So I said, and he was dead. His face was straight, solid seriousness. And like, I mean, my jaw dropped and I said, "Okay, get on the line, Stu. We got to do a little skating." But I mean, he said it so funny, like, and you know what? I work with him at the NHL Network, and we've talked about that a few times. But boy, what a scary individual. But you see them, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There was guys. I mean, that were just scary, just really scary individuals. Not only tough, but scary.
See, I thought you might have gone with the WHA answer, whether it was like, Gordy Machine Gun Gallant or Steve Durbano or one of
Well,
these guys, Frankie Beaton. Like, I thought you were going to go that direction.
okay, let's go that direction. Steve Durbano was the nuttiest nut bar in
Yeah.
in hockey history. If anybody's listening to this, look up Steve Durbano. And I was 14 years old when he played for the Toronto Marlies, and I was coming off an injury. And they said, "Why don't you practice with the big Marlies?" Because I was playing for the midget Marlies at the time,
Yeah.
and or U16s as they call them now,
Yes, thank
right?
you.
Okay,
Correct. Yes, very
sorry,
good.
sorry.
Well
But
done.
back then it
Well
was
done.
minor atom, bantam, midget.
Pee-wee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're practicing, and I went around him, and he chopped me, and he dropped his gloves against me. I was 130 pounds. I was so scared at this guy. Like Steve, all the other Marlies jumped him. They just jumped him. And I stood back there, and like, I mean, I got Billy Harris and Steve Shutt and all of those guys jumping Steve Durbano because he was coming after me. And like, I mean, ever since that moment, it was crazy. Like another one, and he ended up in jail. Another guy that ended up in jail who I thought was just out there was Randy Holt. I don't know if you remember him,
Oh, yeah.
but
He set the penalty minute record.
yes,
Most
just
penalty minutes in a
look
game. He was. Ooh.
look him up. I mean,
Yeah.
they weren't crazy like Tiger. Like Tiger Williams was the best teammate you ever want to meet, even though he holds all kinds of penalty minute records. But like, I don't have enough time to go through all the stories I could tell about Tiger, but they are funny. I mean, if you want to go through one story with Tiger, okay,
Shoot.
okay, the one story, he comes into camp one day. This is when I was playing with the Maple Leafs, and he's got his whole body, the front of his body is all scabs. Like if you get cut and then
Yeah.
the scab grows over. But I mean, I'm talking, he's covered in scabs. And I said, "Tig, what the heck happened to you?" And he says, he's got a voice. He goes, "Gabby, I got to tell you this." And I says, "What?" He says, "Well, the day before we came to camp, or a couple days before," he says, "I was with a bunch of buddies, and we were fixing some stuff at the house, and we needed plywood." And he said, "So we waited till 3 in the morning." And he said, "We went to the local not hardware store, but I mean, where they had lumberyard. That's the word I'm looking for. And he says, we broke in and we stole all this plywood. And he said, but we had a flatbed truck to bring it home in. And he said, and I said, I volunteered to hop on the back and hold all the plywood together. And he said, we were doing about 60 down the back roads, and all of a sudden the plywood starts hydroplaning because they didn't bring anything to tie it down. So he ended up hydroplaning and ending up on the highway, bouncing back and forth on the highway. And that's why he had all the scabs on his body. But like, I mean, only Tiger could do that. He was one of a kind and a really good man, but he would fight for you tooth and nail for your team, but he wasn't a nutty kind of guy like the other guys I mentioned.
You know what I like about this edition of Hey Gabby? It transitioned right into story time, and you gave us both. You gave us a great tough guy story, and you gave us a great story about Dave Tiger Williams. So we'll hold on to what story time was going to be this week until next week, because that Tiger Williams story is not going to be defeated. Gabby, great job again today. We'll talk to you in 7 days. Thanks for joining us this week on The Hockey Lifers.